Hello and welcome. Alright, so in this video we'll be talking about JavaScript function. JS function. Now, what is function? So function is a very important term. It's very important in JavaScript, in programming generally. Function is a block code or a block of code that is designed to perform a specific task. So let me write this in capital letter, is a block of code that is designed to perform a specific task. Now, function is a block of code that is designed to perform a specific task. Okay, so you have used function before, but you don't know that that's a function. So console.log. Alright, so this is console.log is an inbuilt JavaScript function. So because we say functions are something that are designed to perform a specific task, what is console.log designed to perform? It's designed to print messages. It's designed to print a text or a string or a number. So let's write something here and say print. So if we open this in our console, you will see the word print. So this is a function. Okay, but we are going to be looking at a function that is like a bit more than just console.log, and there are special terms that we used. Two very important terms that you should not forget when using a function is that first, we have to declare a function. We call that function declaration. Let's write that down. Function declaration. Okay, function declaration. And there is another term that is used, which is called function call. Okay, so we first declare a function and then we call it. But how do we declare function? Now, to declare a JavaScript function, we need a special keyword, JavaScript keyword called function. Remember when we were talking about variables, we spoke about JavaScript keywords, we talked about function as a keyword. So now, for us to use a function in JavaScript, we need to declare the JavaScript keyword function. Okay, then the function name. We need to give the function a name. Let's say we want to square something, so we just give this square. So this square now is referring to the name of the function. Then we open brackets. So inside of this bracket we open, there is what we call parameter. So parameter is a value that is set to a function when calling it. So the name of the parameter does not really matter, but it's just that you cannot use special JavaScript words, keywords. So we can name this, let's just name it number. Okay, so this is the parameter. Now then we open braces, open our curly braces. Now, so this is one way of declaring a function, and this particular way of declaring function, we call it a function declaration. Let's write it at the top here. So there are three ways of declaring function. This is the first one. Three ways of declaring a function. I have one, function declaration. Okay, so we have the function declaration as the first way of declaring a function. So inside this function, this space inside of it, like from this curly braces to this other curly braces, is the body. So we call this part the body. Okay, so this inside of here, we can perform different operations. We can do several things inside. So let's say, since we already say square, let's do console.log. We write this parameter here again. Let's say number. If we run this, you notice that nothing is showing. There is nothing showing here. Why? Because we only declare this function, and by declaring the function, it's not guaranteed that it's going to work. If you declare a function, it's not going to work. You have to call the function and ask it to work before it will work. So now we declared the function, this function named square, and then we called the number, and then in this console.log we wrote number, but nothing is showing. So how do we call the function? So we can call the function by saying this square here, copy it outside this curly braces, we put that square. Okay, then you open bracket, then we now put the value that we want this square to have, the value of this parameter. Remember I said this thing is called a parameter, so the value of this parameter is what we put here. So this whole thing is called, this part is called argument. So the argument is the value that we give to our parameter. So this is our parameter. Now this is the argument. So let's say I will give this 2. So if we run this, you can now see the 2 in the console section. Okay, now that's one way of declaring a function. Please don't get confused. So there's another way of declaring a function. Second way, we call that function expression. Function. Okay, let's comment this. Okay, I wanted to comment all these parts. Okay, now let's go to the second way of declaring a function. Number 2. Okay, so this other way is called function expression. Okay, function expression. So in this way of declaring function, what we do is that we we use like a variable, and then we store the function inside that variable. For example, we say const, that's constant, then we give it a name, a variable name. Let's say greet, or let's just use name. Then we do equals to, and then we write our function. Okay, so this is the second way of declaring a function. It's called function expression. Let me remove this because it's like it's commenting the whole thing. Okay, so this is another way of declaring a function, by adding a variable to it and then calling the function. Okay, now there is the third way of declaring a function. So this way is called arrow function. Arrow function. Now, arrow function is like the most modern way of declaring function. So this is the way of declaring function that you see the most. Arrow function and function declaration. Function expression is not used often, but it's just for knowledge sake, you know it. But arrow function is the most modern way of using function. Most times you use function declaration in very specific cases, but 99% of the time you use arrow function. Now, this is the syntax of arrow function. You say const, like you are declaring a variable, then you say name equals to, you open, so the inside this place, that's where your parameter is. Let me just write it here. Parameter, your parameter is inside here. Then you do your arrow, that's this, and then this sign. Okay, then your curly braces. Okay, so this is an arrow function. Alright, so those are the three different ways of declaring a function. Now, let's take all this out. This might be a bit confusing if it's your first time, but if you go over the video and you keep working with it, you will just see that everything becomes easy to understand. Now let's remove all this and let's do practical so that you understand what we have been saying. So we say ways of declaring function. We say function declaration. We said function expression, and we said arrow so let's write some functions now. Let's the function declaration. Let's use the example to write some function. So we'll do function, then remember the function name. Let's say I want this to sum numbers for me. Yes, let's say I want this to add two different numbers for me, and then I'll say add. So this is the function name. So I can give this A and B. Then so inside here I'll say console.log A plus B. Okay, so I want you to add A plus B. So let's give the value of A by calling it. So I will say add. Now say 2 and 10 or 2 and 20. Alright, so when we run this, we have 22 as our answer. Okay. Remember I said that you can also call this in another way, which is by using a variable. Let's say const. And then we say sum. And then inside here we say add 2 plus 5. Then instead of writing A and B here, I can just come to this console.log and write sum. Okay. Not inside of this place. I'll bring it outside here. Alright. Now you see that this is giving me undefined. Why is it giving me undefined? Because there is something in function, when using function, that we call return statement. So that return statement, as long as I don't use that return statement, now it does not even know what I want it to add, since I'm using a variable. So I have to use the return statement. So what I would do for this thing to work would be, I'll just say return, then I'll say A plus B. So I've given it an instruction of what to do. The reason why it was saying, let's review it. The reason why it was saying undefined is because it did not even know what to do with this code. You get? I did not tell it what to do with the code. That's why it's saying undefined. So if we check this now, we see that it added the number for us because we used the return statement. If we remove this, saying undefined. So if you are going to use this syntax, you must use the return statement. A plus B. Okay. Alright, so now let's look at other ways of writing. Let's look at other ways of writing function. So I'll say function, then the name. Let's say I want it to greet somebody that's just visiting the website. Let's say I want it to greet somebody. and then I'll say greet. Okay, so this is the function name. Then the parameter, I will say name. Now, so inside the function body, I'll say console.log name. Now, so let's give this parameter a value. So I'll come down here, I'll say greet. Then here, the name, I'll not say Esther. Sorry, this is a string. Esther. Illegal return statement. Okay, where did I use return statement? Oh, I did not comment this code. Remember that JavaScript reads codes line by line. So he read the return statement first. So let's check this again. Okay, so you see Esther. So now, this is where the function property is very important. Let's say I want this page to greet so many people, but I don't want to keep writing all this code over and over again. So what I'll do is I just paste this greet, like I'll call it as many times as I want, and then I will change the name. Favor David Michael Peter John. So let's see what happens. Alright, so you see all the different names I wrote, they appeared here. Okay, so that's one importance of function. So instead of me repeating this code and writing function for this name, for this name, for this name, I can just declare the function, then I can call it as many times as I want. Okay, so this might be a bit confusing, but that's how it is. Just make sure you go over it and you watch the video as many times as possible to understand the concept, because when we are going to be applying this, if you don't know the syntax, the most important thing I want you to pick from this video is learn the syntax, which is this function, the name of the function, the parameter, then the argument. Okay, so declaring the function and calling the function. So use anyone that is easy for you to use. If you cannot use arrow function, use function declaration. Okay, so now for your assignment, you are going to create a function. Create something like this, then create another function with two different parameters and do like arithmetic operation, adding the number or dividing or subtracting. Okay, so that's all for JavaScript function. See you in the next video.